All right, hi, my name is Ben Himmelfarb. It is January 10th, 2023. I'm at the main library of Richmond Public Library to interview Chris Olson-Vickers for the RPL100 Anniversary Stories and Memories Project. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you for sitting down and
Oh, sure, my pleasure.
contributing. So our project, our RPL100 project, is about the past, present, and future of Richmond Public Library. Generally, we start with the past. And how long have you been coming to Richmond Public Library?
Well, I moved here in 70, and so I think in 70, my son was born in 70, so 71.
Okay.
Because we used to come down to the children's library down here and spend the day.
Spend the whole day?
Yeah.
Wow. And we're in the basement of the main library.
Correct.
And would you enter off the street there or come in the front?
Both, it just depended. Yeah, we rode the bus downtown.
Okay.
And yeah.
What did you hope bringing him here would do for him?
Well, I always loved reading as a child. I grew up in Germany. My father was in the military, and that was in the 50s, and no television. So for entertainment, I just read voraciously and loved books, and I wanted my son to have the same feeling I did. And it's just a magical place. I mean, it was quiet and lovely, and staff was wonderful. So.
Did you leave him here, or did you?
No, he was an infant, or like a
yeah.
year, from 1 year to about 4, I think, is probably during the time I would bring him down.
Okay. And you said you would take the bus down. Did you? 1970, there weren't all the branches there are now. So what part of the city were you coming from?
South side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that was before Broad Rock, before Hull Street.
Right. I think they had the one on Forest Hill
Westover.
or Westover. Yeah, but we weren't near that. So.
And did it work? Did he grow up with a love of reading? And
unfortunately, no.
what happened?
He's a real active person. Well, he has a learning disability, so reading was always a challenge for him.
How did you discover that?
When he was in, I think, 2nd grade, he was tested, and they determined that he had dyslexia.
I see. Well,
Now, my daughter, on the other hand, she was 20 months younger than he, and she was an infant, and I would bring her down here. Now, she was an avid, she always had a book in her face. And when she started nursery school and kindergarten, we begged the teachers, please don't let her take a nap. She'll be up half the night reading. Particularly 1st grade, she just has always loved books.
And so you would bring her along too?
Sure.
Did, with your son, did coming to the library and exposing him to books and reading and having him be read to, that's all good stuff to do whether he someone has dyslexia
is interested or not. Right. And his father was a real avid, I mean, he always read as well. And we did not have a television till he started kindergarten, and then he wanted a TV, so we got a little black and white TV.
Right.
So.
Do you have any memories of particular staff people here?
I don't. That was so long ago. My son is now 52.
Right.
So that was a long 50 years ago. So no, I don't.
And did you continue? You continue bringing them to the library during their adolescence?
No. I started working with Richmond Public Schools, and they would certainly get books from the library there.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you do for?
Well, I started off as a teacher's aide. I was certified to teach in North Carolina, but not in Virginia, and so and then I worked my way up, and then got my master's in social work, and went into social work.
Interesting.
So.
And when they, obviously you were bringing your kids here for exposure to books and learning. Did you also take things out? Did you
Sure.
find things to read?
Yeah, I love, well, one thing about moving to Richmond that I really liked, I read Virginia Dabney's History of Richmond, and I was working at the welfare department at the time, and I would take my lunch break and walk around to different places I'd just read about and just stand in awe of history happened here.
Right.
And so lived here, so I really like linking reading with actual places.
Right. Getting to
Right,
make it
but-
concrete.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you mostly read nonfiction?
Yes, I love biographies. As a child growing up in Germany, that's who I read about. Annie Oakley, Wild Bill Hickok, because I just didn't know America, because our culture was living in Germany.
Right.
And I had a teacher in the 5th grade who read all of the Little House on the Prairie series. If we behaved in the morning after lunch, she always read that
Yeah.
to us, and that just brought the United States alive to me, and really I enjoyed that a lot, hearing about that being read too. And a fond memory I have, I was just looking at it this morning, a picture taken of my dad reading to us from the classics, the Arabian Nights and those Three Musketeers, and so.
So sounds like reading books and adults reading to kids and stuff was part of your family culture.
It was, yeah,
It wasn't something that you had to seek out.
no.
It was brought to you.
And growing up in Germany, the library was probably about 2 miles from where we lived. This is when I was in 3rd through 7th grade, and I spent a large amount of my time in the library. I would walk over and just sit and read.
Was it a base
Yeah,
library?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because one thing I've learned working in public libraries, other countries don't necessarily have the same idea of the public library or institutions
Oh, I
that we
didn't
do.
know that.
They'll, the word library usually means something more academic to them or
Right.
government to them. It's less of a place anyone can come of any age.
Well, an interesting story aside from that, when we lived in Germany, we became friends with a German man who taught in a one-room schoolhouse, and he had been Rommel's Jeep driver, captured and put in a POW camp in Chicago. And how we got to meet him was my father hunted and fished, and the man that was the forest ranger for the village didn't speak English, but this man did.
Right.
And I remember visiting, they had the one-room school. This was in the 50s now, with the slate and the inkwells and all the students from the little village in this one classroom. And I loved playing school over there when class was out, and he had this one room where he kept all his teaching aids. He had these huge maps in these drawers that we would pull out, and I was just fascinated in all the kinds of science stuff. So anyway, that's
Wow.
just an aside that.
But that sounds like from an early age you had an exposure to what rural education
Exactly.
could be
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
as well as what the wider world had to offer.
Yeah.
So coming back to Richmond, your children were your entree into the library.
Well, I would bring them for exposure too, and for me to have the opportunity to check out books
Right.
as well.
And were you always a main library user, or did you ever get around to the other branches over time?
No, and I moved to Henrico and use Libby Mill now.
I see. Are there any memories about events that took place at the library or performances?
Back in the 70s, I don't recall I mean, they may have had them, but I think I was busy with 2 little kids.
Yeah.
Wasn't thinking about things that interested me. It was more focused on childhood kind of stuff. Now, I do remember a friend of mine owned a bookstore here in Richmond, and she had Maurice Sendak
Oh, wow.
come, and we bought Where the Wild Things Are, and he
yeah.
signed that book. So that was kind of fun.
Do you, what do you think the value of the library is, especially from your point of view as a social worker today, in the present? What function do you see public libraries performing?
I think, unfortunately, so much is happening in the media world that I think children are less likely to want to read a book than to use their phones to look up something. I think to reach those kids, I think there would be more involvement with media. And I'm not up on what all's available. I'm old school, give me a book any day.
Yeah.
And I heard a thing on NPR the other day about how Kindle is ruining like bookstores and things like that, you know, the
Right.
sale of books. So anyway, I
Well,
don't
it's
know if that
interesting.
affects library or not. But
It believe it or not, the ebook use,
okay,
it doesn't take away from the print use. They just kind of both grow
okay,
over
okay,
time.
good.
Because there are some people who want to read a book in print form, and there are some people
Right.
who want to read a book in ebook form.
Right. Yeah, I've got friends that love their ebooks, and
Right.
because you don't have to lug around something. You can pack them in your suitcase when you travel. And
Right.
It's easier.
And it performs a similar function that for print books, you don't have to buy a million books.
Right.
You can check out the digital.
Exactly. They made that point on NPR.
Yeah. What kind of social work did you do in the city?
Well, I started off in the welfare department and then transferred over to mental health. I didn't know anything about mental health, but just embraced it. And my supervisor at the time encouraged me to get my master's, which I did. It took me 5 years, but I was working full-time and part-time and in graduate school, and just ate it up, just loved it. And then I was hired in Henrico County and retired from there, and when I was 70, and they called me back after a year, and I worked another till the pandemic hit. So that was a part-time. And I've also been a patient advocate at what used to be the Medical College of Virginia. So I've just always enjoyed working with people and social justice issues.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because the library functions as a kind of a sanctuary space for a lot of people.
It does, yeah.
I don't know if you've, obviously you don't need to talk about clients or anything like that, but did the public library overlap at all with your work in any way?
We would have clients sometimes that would come here, particularly in cold weather.
Yeah.
And as long as they were quiet, I think they were allowed to stay, you know, didn't disrupt the business of the library. I think
Sure.
they were permitted to stay. I don't recall ever being called to come and respond to an issue here,
Yeah.
although I imagine that some probably did happen. And some people fearful because they don't understand or haven't experienced working with somebody or knowing someone with a mental illness.
Right.
And unfortunately, most of those people that were fearful would hear stuff on the news, and unfortunately that blows it out of proportion because there are plenty that live and work and have normal lives.
Yeah.
So
Well, and here, the thing that attracted me to working in the library is the mix of education, social interaction, but also self-directed learning.
yes,
You know,
yes,
um,
yeah,
And I wonder if you feel that that's important.
Oh,
and-
absolutely. I mean, there's nothing more wonderful than to, like right now it's quiet and you and I are the only ones down here, but to come in a library and indulge, I think it's a real privilege, and there's nothing to distract you. You can focus on whatever you want to learn about.
Right.
And that leads to other things. You know, you read something in a book and you go, oh, I wonder about this that I've read in a book. And
Right.
then you go to that.
And then you
So,
can follow it
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah.
you want to.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, something here that, you know, that we pride ourselves on is anyone can walk in the door, ask for help or not, you know, or just be in the
Right.
space. And, you know, I know that's something that we are very committed to preserving in the city. Do you have dreams for the future of the library? Do you have things that you would like us to start doing or like us to keep doing?
Well, I think I know what you've already done are different. I've come and heard different speakers here.
Sure.
And a couple of years ago, I took a photography class and we had a show here. So I think it's a wonderful educational place or an opportunity to have some cultural events that anybody can come to. You know, a lot of things cost money and not everybody has money.
Right.
So, and it's a wonderful way to encourage people who maybe not be professionals, but want to exhibit something that they're proud of, that they've done, whether music, art, literature.
Sure. Writers.
So, yeah.
You have a probably nostalgic and personal connection to this building,
I do.
and there are plans for renovating the building.
Okay.
Those plans are not finalized by any means.
Okay.
You know, it's a
Okay.
multi-year
Sure.
process. But obviously there's this 1930s part of the building that we're in. There's the 1970s part of the building,
Right.
which was new when you started
Well,
coming
I
here,
think
right?
I saw, I can't remember when it was done, but I was disheartened when I saw it modernized because I love having lived in Europe, just the architecture is just,
Right.
and so I kind of miss that. But I mean, I understand you can't have bricks falling down and people injured, and
Sure.
you do have to. I mean, the electricity, electricals. I mean, all that, and I mean, with computers around, you have to upgrade to stay active. But anyway,
But when renovations are done and changes are made, what are some things that you want to see preserved or represented in the new life?
yeah, and I think that can be done. Some of the historic pieces or original pieces of furniture, if that could, I mean, however, I don't know necessarily desks, but like this counter here, I don't know how old that is. It might be fairly new, but just maintain some of and maybe have a little placard that
Yeah.
describes what that is.
So you don't want us to go too modern.
Well, that's my own opinion, but I'm not standing in the way of progress.
Understood. Understood. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I'm just glad to be here today, and it really makes me want to come back. And and I know there's an exchange between Henrico and the city, so that's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad about that.
Right. Anyone can
Yeah.
be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'd like to, I mean, I feel like this is hallowed ground down here in the archive section.
Special collection.
Yeah, I just, I know last year or a year before I went on a tour, a back behind the scenes tour of the Valentine Museum. I just wanted to sit there and just spend a week
Right.
just looking through stuff and
Discovery.
yeah. I mean, there's history here.
Right. Well, I'm happy to say that definitely part of the renovations and the direction we're moving now is making all of this more publicly available and publicly usable.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Right now, part of the reason that some of these spaces are kind of sleepy is that we don't necessarily have the staff to keep them open.
Right.
But the building may change, but the collections
Will
know,
remain. Yeah.
will remain. And I want to thank you for participating in
Oh,
RPL100.
thank you, Ben. It was a pleasure bumping into you at an event
Yeah.
here, and then